Jan Hickman. I work for the Association for Physical Education, and I'm one of their health and safety officers. There are 3 of us, and I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. Can I just thank you all for turning up after a long day. I hope you find this really helpful and beneficial. It's so much better if you do come in and ask questions. It really helps. So please, anything that's in your head, either just unmute and fire away. We'll keep it very informal, or as Jess said, raise your hand. But before we kick off, Jess and I just had a conversation about when we did this last time, and we've worked out it was in October 2020. If you're on the call in October 2020, seems like a lifetime away, just go and take up the precious time, because you may find it some of the slides similar. I do change it, but first of all I do a warm-up. So without further ado, let's get going here. So here's the first picture. Is there anything in that picture that you issue? Jess has told me we've got all primary teachers, students, a university lecturer. Welcome. Delighted that you can join us tonight. Anything on there you're worried about? Chip in now. I'm going to get some voices straight away to break it up. Come on, be brave and unmute, fire away.
Why have some children got shoes on and some haven't?
Good. So we really try and avoid mixed footwear at all costs, so well spotted. So bare feet for gymnastics. Looking at the floor, it's ideal. Anything else? Anything else worries you? How about the frame, climbing frame?
Too many children on the climbing frame at once in certain areas. Right.
So that's a great observation, and it comes up each time, and why I've chosen this slide. There isn't actually a number, a limiting number. So first of all, it's down to your risk assessment and your staff. It's something to discuss amongst your staff, and all frames are different, but they're all working away quite happily there, and so not an issue. Anything else? How about the child in the foreground there doing the bridge? Anything there you're worrying about? Great challenging activity.
The mat on the operator.
Yeah, so they are really old mats, those, and they Rectacell. I don't think I see them in schools now, but really we shouldn't be using any apparatus for what it's not designed to be used for. So draping it over the box. We're only going to put mats where the young people are jumping off. So the girl who's fiddling around with her ears, I think, on that top left, she's got a mat to jump onto, so that's in a great place. But there is a mat in that picture which is inappropriately placed. Can you spot it? Yeah. Anybody see a mat that's not quite in the right place?
Underneath the ladder?
Yeah, underneath the ladder. So we're really advised not to put mats underneath the frame, underneath equipment. In this instance, it's underneath a ladder. Sometimes people try and put apparatus onto mats and discourage that. So really, again, I'll just reiterate, because it comes up every webinar, we're placing mats. And legally, we place mats where young people are jumping and landing. They are to absorb the impact. But when I'm teaching gymnastics, I also use a mat in another area rather than jumping and landing. And it's when I'm teaching very young children how to roll for the first time and using their spines. And I just find it's just more comfortable for them, and it gives them more confidence if they're rolling on a softer surface than the floor. Okay, there's a couple of other things here, and the benches that are stacked on that wall, we really want to discourage that. Really close to the frame there as well, so that's a danger, a hazard. And the hair not tied back, if I'm looking at safe practice equals good practice, so hair tied back. Let's move on to the next one here. And great reception class, learning to climb ropes. Brilliant photo, love to see this happening in schools. You know, when they're so small and light, they've got a greater chance of shinning up the ropes. So teaching them early is really a really good practice. Just a bit worried with the little boy at the back there. I hate queuing in gymnastics, so that would is an area I think I'd hone in on. But it's the boy's clothing and the boy who's got one leg up on the left-hand side there. It's just really trying to avoid jogging bottoms for kit in this context, because sometimes they can just get caught onto the ankles and they'll start to slip. So the little girl with the shorts and t-shirt is absolutely spot on, bare feet, brilliant. And really, I'd hope to see all the jumpers off as well if they were working inside. Should be working up a sweat. Any observations on that? I think I've covered it off. Not sure what the two are doing at the back there. Bit worrying if they're out of PE. But we can talk about young people out of PE. Now I've just stuck this in here just for your own development. This is secondary school, know that, but some people ask me whether they need a separate qualification to teach gymnastics and a separate qualification to teach in this area. And if you have QTS, qualification, qualified teacher status, you are absolutely fine to teach gymnastics in the primary school. At secondary level, it's having that specialist physical education degree that enables you to work in this context as well. I will come on more about who can teach PE and qualifications further on in the presentation. This is just warming us up. Answer yes or no, don't worry, shout this out just in your own head. Is it yes or no, the answer to this one? I'm hoping we've got some HLTAs, TAs on tonight, actually. If we have, let me know in the chat box. And if you teach physical education, because the answer is a definite yes. We've got a wide range of fantastic teaching assistants out there who are getting qualifications in this area and are passionate. And it comes down to your employer or your head teacher, your governing body, if they deem that member of staff competent. Okay, the answer is a definite yes. Of course, if this member of staff feels not very confident teaching gymnastics, then to jump onto some training would be advisable. Keep the chat box populated, and Jess, chip in as well if any questions are coming up. Yes or no to this one? So the answer is this is no. Too many risks involved in terms of staff student weight ratio. If you were playing table tennis, badminton, slightly different, there's no collision, no chance of any contact. Okay. So in the new book, which we'll show you in a moment, and hopefully you've got the copy in front of you. If you have, I'll start to put some page numbers into this presentation, but if you haven't, it doesn't matter. I asked for some photographs to try and brighten up the book, and I was sent this one, and I couldn't use it, and you'll know why, and that's the footwear. You know, we would have had folks across the country saying, oh, is it all right then to wear plimsolls for dance and gymnastics? And the answer is no. Really good practice is in bare feet. For this example here, where they can stretch their feet, point their toes, which gives the quality of movement. So really good practice. And you'll hear me say this over and over, and log it yourselves when a member of staff asks you a question. Is this right? Safe practice is a lot of common sense, and safe practice equals good practice and vice versa. Here we've got fantastic practice going on, great kit, great hair being tied back, stretching out those limbs. I mean, it's just beautiful aesthetic movement. Again, I was sent this one to go into the book and I couldn't put it in. It's such a shame, because if we look at her hands, first of all, when I'm analysing movement and working out you know, how I can correct movement, I'll often start with what's touching the floor, whether it's feet or hands. And this one here, her hands are perfectly placed. They are underneath the shoulders. So if she's going to balance upside down, she's got that perfect alignment. She's also got her fingers sprayed, which is giving her more support on the floor. Hair tied back, which is great. And it's the head position that will keep her safe. So she's not going to fall over towards us because her head is slightly cocked. Now, I often say to children, look at your hands when you go upside down, and that makes their head slightly cocked and it stops them falling, going splat when they go upside down. So there's teaching points there. Arms straight, look at your hands are perfect points for going upside down. And I couldn't put this one in because she's doing her cartwheel on a mat. And again, colleagues across the country would just go, oh, are AFBI now promoting cartwheeling on mats? And the answer to that is absolutely not. We want to cartwheel on the floor, handstand on the floor, mats for jumping and landing. Again, this is our warm-up, so I'm really moving on a bit faster now. Okay, good practice here, safe practice. I think it's brilliant. I love the way this is, you know, our SGO school to local sports centres and having festivals. Example here where we've got different, you know, really adaptive tasks going on the left-hand side, you know, just starting on the ladder, moving right across to the right-hand side of the screen where we're starting to hurdle well. And why I've put this slide in is the teacher there, she has her back to some pupils, and we deem that unsafe practice. She can't see, she hasn't got eyes in the back of her head. But I'm thinking this teacher is very good, and she's just run in to give some teaching points to the girl in the orange tabard there, and then she's going to run back out again, and that will be acceptable. So it's a quick movement in, but I've kept it in to remind me to tell you that when you're teaching, remember to take your lanyard off if it's got keys or badges on, and you're bending down in gymnastics and starting to help a child with a movement. We have had accidents where the lanyard has got caught. So, you know, as you walk into the gymnasium or school hall, just whip it off quick. Okay. Here we've got some secondary pupils, but it doesn't matter because the reason this slide is in is just to reiterate that AFBI have changed their line on jewellery. You know, we really just want all jewellery off before any physical education lesson. You know, in the previous edition of Safe Practice, we said about taping, but you know, taping can get very messy. So in your school policy, have you got all jewellery to be removed? And we can discuss that a little bit later on, how we can go about that if you've got jewellery creeping in for physical education. I think we're coming up to the end now of our warm-up. How about this one? Is it a yes or a no? And this changed actually in the last 4 years. It used to be that staff couldn't rub cream in, and now the rule has changed, and yes, we can. And we can have school sun cream. And this needs to be part of your policy though, so parents know that this happens at your school. So it has to be agreed by your governing body. Again, policy documentation I cover. So that just wanted to let you know that you can apply sun cream. And this has been creeping since we've returned from COVID. We're rapidly trying to get those pupils who couldn't swim in lockdown, trying to get them up to speed, giving them the opportunity. And then we've got some parents deciding to withdraw them. I don't know if that's happening at your school, I hope not. But what do you do about it? And the answer is that parents cannot withdraw children from swimming lessons. And they can't because if we just equate it with maths and English, it's a statutory area of the curriculum. Jess, I'm going to pause for a minute because I think I've got one more slide here about risk assessments for away sports fixtures. Is it necessary to do one for every fixture? I hope you don't. I really do, because AFBI are saying, you know, that there's no need for, there is certainly a need to do a risk assessment, but not a separate one for everyone. And when I've had school games organisers on these sessions, they often give the party line. I don't know if we've got a Lincolnshire school games organiser on who can say what they do, but common practice is they will send out their own pro forma, and then you'll adjust it for transporting young people there, etc., etc. But there's no need. And we work AFBI works really closely with the Department for Education. They're trying all the time to cut down, reduce workload. Believe it or not. Yeah, last slide in for the warm up, and I've just put this one in just to reiterate about having cycles in schools and wearing helmets when we are introducing scooters and cycling. The British Cycling Association, interestingly, aren't saying you have to have helmets on, but again, good practice, and AFBI, we're saying to put helmets on in this area of activity. Okay, so little warm up there. Let's go on now to the main presentation. And as Jess said, at the very end of today, and I promise I won't run over time, we will be done by 5 o'clock, I promise you. But I would like to invite you to ask questions at the end. So if you do have any, either put them in a chat box, unmute, or save them until the end. But here's what we're going to try and get through. I'm going to go through this document. If you haven't got a copy, we don't need one for tonight's presentation, but I strongly advise every institution to get a copy, and you can, the address is in the bottom bar there, UK Coaching, because it is used, well used in schools. And being the subject leader, I guess you are today, or if you are head teacher, have one, because, you know, over the next 4 years you could be asked questions, and it's all in the book. But my job this afternoon is to canter through the book and let you know as much as I can how it's structured. Now, that's really difficult text to read, so this is chapter 1, and if I say it's about the nuts and bolts of health and safety, that's what we wanted to achieve when we wrote it. So it's everything about the law in physical education, responsibilities, before we get on to teaching. So let's just look at the first, chapter 1, section 1, the role of the employer. So who is your employer? Be really clear on who this is, because the employer now makes decisions, whereas in the past, it may have been the local authority who would send out, say, safe practice guidelines to Lincolnshire schools. Now schools are, some are academies, so your governing body would be making decisions about safe practice. I mentioned about the policy just now. They need to oversee the policy, and they're not just adapting what the local authority has sent out now. But you still might be a local authority school, you may have guidelines sent to you, but commonly what's happening across the country, people are adopting the AFBI, the Association Physical Education Safe Practice book, and saying this is their guideline. So that's the governing body, and as the employer, and your employer will know this acronym inside out, back to front. It will be, probably for some, their ball and chain. It's the Health and Safety at Work Act. Health and Safety at Work Act. And you are on the receiving end of this when you are asked for your risk assessments, when you're asked for your policy documentation, you're asked to do fire drills, lots and lots of things you're asked for health and safety, because your head teacher, your employer, must make sure they're all in place because of this Health and Safety Act that first came into place in 1974, and ever since has been updated. And across the world, we have health and safety so very different to what we have in this country. And our schools are deemed across the world to be some of the safest because of our structures, our systems, our procedures. So look, you can see in building regs, I haven't got any poor safety in schools across the world. But believe you me, our safe practice is phenomenal. And I guess you sitting here tonight, I could take quite a good guess that you yourself, being here, sitting here, giving up this hour tonight, have got good safe practice happening in your institution as well. It just tallies sometimes that the people here are often the ones who've got it in place. So it could be a refresher for you tonight. Do you know the 9 legal responsibilities that you have for teaching PE in your school? So we spoke about the role of your senior leaders. Now your role, the role of you employees. Okay, there are 9. On page 12 of the book that I showed you, we've put it in a flow chart just to kind of bring it alive a bit. And I'm not going to go through them all because we'll be here till probably 6 o'clock. I'm going to take that top one, because this is the one that sometimes slips off the radar a bit. And I wonder when you were last on a safety inspection, a PE safety inspection in your school. So if I could just talk a little bit about what that might look like, because we may have some new teachers on this tonight wondering what that would mean. So every year, and it should be an annual check, you would have a contractor come in to look at your gymnastics equipment and maintain it. They might have to, they'll inspect it first, and then they may have to do some work on it. They may take stuff away, but they must check it annually. Now with COVID, again, things have slipped slightly, but if you're a little bit unclear on this one as to when the last safety inspection was, ask your finance officer, your school bursar, and ask them for the paper trail, because they'll be able to give you the last PE safety inspection, and you can look, if you haven't seen them before, what was looked at, what was done, how much it costs, etc. Because you should be a big part of that, because you know the PE equipment that needs checking, because that's, you know, as being a subject leader of PE, this is very much part of your area. Again, if you want some more help on this area, like who are the contractors, AFPE have worked really closely with the contractors across the country. We have a list of them, the ones that we deem to be the best. And I can supply Jess with that information following tonight's webinar. Any questions on that? Is there any, you know, please do ask, put them in the chat box. And just scoot around the other 8 because you'll see that they are very straightforward. Okay, what I would suggest, if you are a new subject leader of PE, is possibly putting a blank sheet of paper up in your staff room saying, you know, if anyone sees anything amiss, anything unsafe with the PE equipment, could they write it down on the sheet of paper for you to collect for the next inspection? For example, I got some wall bars out the other day in a primary school, and we rubbed it down first. There's quite a lot of dust flying around, but one of the wires was all wrapped around the frame, and we couldn't use it, which was such a shame. So that was a bit of a letdown. But you know, the importance of inspection is very clear. They need to get that done. Okay, so moving through the chapter 1, nuts and bolts of health and safety. This word comes up, and it really, people mustn't worry about this, because if good practice equals safe practice, I mean, you'd never had this going on in your primary school, but I put this photograph up to spell it out, really, to say that, you know, if you've got a crash mat in your primary school and you haven't got anyone who is trained in British gymnastics and really knows what they're doing with this complex piece of equipment, then just put it out of reach of any staff using it. That and the springboard, these are highly risky pieces of gymnastics equipment. So put them out and let staff know that they shouldn't be used for curriculum gymnastics. I doubt whether you'd have a trampette in your primary school, but if you have, give it to your local secondary school. And you know, the idea of them going onto the box there, into the wall, it's good grounds for negligence, it's careless conduct. That would, but what actually constitutes this is when you have, where this duty of care that we have, all of us as teachers, it falls below what is expected of us. And then there's harm or injury, and it's foreseeable. So the reason why we do these risk assessments and we spend time doing them is because we are checking out in advance of something to really make sure that accidents accidents will happen, accidents are minimized. Now, when I first started this job, my first question was, how many accidents happen in PE across the country that go into the courts? Because I used to worry about it a lot. And as soon as I heard what the figures were, I wanted to really, in these webinars, in these opportunities, really build confidence amongst colleagues to say they are so small because we are good at our jobs. We're really good at what we do. And so I want to just shout from the rooftops and tell your staff, get the wall bars out and get all the equipment out, because this is where gymnastics comes alive. And I do worry when I hear staff say, oh, but I'm not very confident. Just get CPD, get Jess in, get anyone in to really to get us back on the road if you haven't had the apparatus out for some time. I fully understand people sometimes think they are, it is it can be dangerous, but when we're really teaching well, it's the very best, and young people absolutely thrive on it, and they need it more than ever. They need to get strong in their upper body because they're on their legs a lot and sitting down a lot. Okay, so let's hone in on this duty of care that we have. Let's go straight to number 3. Where would the duty of care, where would you say this lies? Do we hand it over to the swimming instructors when we take our class to the pool and say, here you are, over to you, your responsibility, I'm just going to go and sit on the side? I hope not. I hope you're up on the side, helping and supporting the instructors if that's how you deliver swimming. But the answer to that one is no, you cannot delegate the duty of care to a third-party provider. So whoever takes your young people swimming, they are carrying that duty of care. So it's really important that they are observing what's going on. They're very much part of that lesson. Any questions on that? Jess, are we all right?
Yeah, it was just somebody answering your question, which was absolutely right. The teacher always has duty. So no questions so far, thank you.
Fantastic, brilliant. So the second one then, scouts hiring a school hall or local judo instructor, people coming in hiring school hall in the evenings. Who holds the duty of care there? Should an accident occur, who's taking responsibility there? And the answer is in the word hire, because if you've got anyone hiring your facilities, then get yourself, if you're the subject leader and they're using your school's equipment, get yourself involved in this, because I speak quite frankly here that I ran to the head and said, they've used all our mats and now they've got like stiletto heels in the mats, and are we going to replace them? You need to know who's hiring it, how much money is involved, because if there is damage to the equipment, we need some of that money coming in to replace equipment. Okay, that's important. And the hire would have a contract attached to it so that they take the duty of care. And that last one, if you've got students coming to your school from another school to take part in a gymnastics competition or whatever you're doing, the school that is hosting has the duty of care. Okay. Now, this is a real incident now, and we had AFP, the association, has a hotline 24/7. If you're a member, you can ask questions. And this came through as a question. So the member of staff of that year 6 class wasn't in this lesson. Do they need to be? They've hired a coach, a school have hired a gym coach to come in. So there's lots in there to determine whether who carries the can, who's responsible. And let's just unpick it, and let's look at the coach, the gymnastics coach. The first thing that would be asked in this scenario is, what are the qualifications of the coach? The Association for PE, there's a section in chapter 1 on qualifications, and it would say a level 2 British Gymnastics Award is what we are saying as an association would be the appropriate level. So if you're having a coach come in, do check the quality. I'm sure you do. I'm sure someone in this school does, as well as their safeguarding qualification certificates. The next part of this is looking at what are the young people doing, and your schemes of work would be looked at. So is this accident, is it part of a scheme of work, a unit of work? What were they doing last week, the week before? Is this a continuation? Is there progression, or was it a one-off lesson? So your importance of schemes of work here are, when you're going, oh no, have I got to rewrite that or update that? Yes, your documentation is really important. Okay, what about working remotely? Is that teacher wrong by not being in that lesson? The answer to that is it depends. In this instance, I'm going to just pretend here that this member of staff has observed this gym coach, has completed some lesson observations of which they're documented and can show those if need be, and is very happy with that gym coach being left to work with that year 6 class. They're not going to be out masses of time. They've gone out to see somebody. They're going to go straight back in there again. The gym coach knows that, etc. But it really depends on lots and lots of variables here. So this one isn't a straight yes or a no. But I hope I've clarified what we would be looking for in the event of an accident. But how do you assess competence? I've mentioned that member of staff is filling in a pro forma, and I'll just quickly show. I'm going to just flash it up on the screen quick there. I don't want you to have a close look at it, maybe it's too small, but littered throughout the book are templates for you to use. That was the one on competence. If you want to do a lesson observation on somebody, you've probably got those in your school, I bet you have, but you may want to, as a result of today's webinar, look at certain paperwork you've got in school, look at it in terms of the new booklet that the association has produced, and think, yep, there's some stuff there we can magpie and pop it in, etc. But how do we assess it? Well, what we do to assess, I'm going to come back to that photo. We use the health and safety executive, this national executive that gives us these 4 very clear ways of demonstrating competence. So if ever you're in any doubt of a sports coach coming in, anybody coming into your school as to how you measure competence, the first one is, what's their qualification? They might hold an equivalent qualification. So if I give you an example there, let's say you have a football coach coming in and you want them to teach rugby. It's an invasion game. You know, the football qualification should go across there. The same principles involved. You might want to just double check as to what they've taught through an interview. But received appropriate in-house training. It could have been they've attended your staff meetings, and also competent through experience. So they may have years of working at in a local sports club, and etc. But there's lots, and it's not just one, it's just not 2, it's a whole range how you get to decide that person is competent, that they are good guidelines. So this tennis coach here, I love this picture because it's such great practice. It's good practice. I ignore the taping of the ears. That's not such great practice. Don't like that as much. Wish the earrings were out. But, you know, crouching down there, getting onto that child's level, perfect. What I'm very keen, though, is that teacher in the background is in on the lesson. So she's got a specialist coach coming in. So she's learning about how to teach great tennis. But she's also knows those young people back to front, inside out. She's the class teacher and she knows their behaviour. She knows what they're capable of. So she's able to kind of manage that area, and between them both can deliver a really exciting games lesson. Moving through, still on chapter 1, a quick look at the time. Yeah, we're doing all right. This is the chunk of the big bulk of this safe practice book. Risk management. And I hate that photo, hate it with a vengeance. If we remove all risk, so let's go back to the thread that I've been following tonight, and that's gymnastics. If we don't get the wall bars out and we just do floor work forever and a day in gymnastics, we are removing risks. And we are avoiding young people really developing upper body strength. And how many young people in your class can shin up the ropes? How many people can hang from the wall bars and really, they have got strength. And it's the strength of our nation that our National Health Officer, I know they're worrying about COVID right now, but I'm sure coming down the line will be, how strong are our young people in schools, their upper body? Look at them, how they sit at a desk. Are their backs straight? Our subject in terms of really improving handwriting by sitting straight, if we could just get their upper girdle strong through doing more gymnastics, going upside down and taking body weight, we could work miracles in terms of young people reading and writing well. So I love this slide, because on the left-hand side there, you've got the cotton wool child, where everything is totally safe. So we just balance on the floor, for example. That's absolutely minimizing all risks. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we've got a game I used to play, but I bet all of you are too young to remember it, Pirates, it was called, where we chased our friends around the gymnasium on and off equipment. If it was a wet weather day, we just got all the equipment out and we had a taggers and off we went, and it was madness, but I loved it. Highly dangerous, it's been banned. But where do we sit for physical education lessons and after school sport? And it's where it says best practice challenge versus risk. So we're moving along the spectrum. We have got risk involved in what we're doing, but we have assessed it, and we've got challenge in there, and it works, because we can't make all our work as safe as possible. We just can't. It'd just be really boring, our lessons. We make everything as safe as necessary. So I just think that sort of brings that home, doesn't it? We can get bogged down sometimes with health and safety, can't we? But it's worth it. It's really worth it. All of what I was saying about good schemes, great documentation, all of this is what is worth it in the end, honestly. And in this context here, member of staff said, in this swimming pool, let's get some magic eyes inserted, and it saved a child's life. So that just by somebody deciding and assessing what could improve a situation. Now, just lastly, in chapter 1, when I said it's the nuts and bolts of health and safety, for the first time ever in the book, there is a sample, an example PE policy. I've mentioned this a few times now because it is the root of safe practice in your school. Have you a PE policy? When was it last updated? Maybe, as a result of tonight, if you're scribbling things down, you can't do everything, just prioritize what you're going to do. If you haven't revised your PE policy, then I'd probably put that at the top, actually. But you can look at the example, pages 25 to 31, and that will help you see what, maybe if anything's missing. Yeah. I think I've exhausted that one. I'm not going to spend too long on the risk assessment because I think people now are really up to speed on risk assessment. I think we've gone overboard with it to a point, but we have got in the book some example risk assessments as well. Here's one in a school hall, for example. So I said about the book, lots of information there for you to help you in your leadership and management role. Okay, on to chapter 2. I think over the next, well, the book is revamped every 4 years. And this chapter here in the next 3 years, because we've been at it a year now, this would be your go-to chapter, I think, because looking at the headings there, just scoot down them. When you're asked a question by a member of staff, I reckon it'll be this chapter, because chapter 2 is all about the teaching of physical education, everything about teaching. So the first one is about the law, this one here. So just look down, and I'm just going to pick one out. I'm going to hone it, and it's the 4th one from the bottom. And it's clothing I'm going to, and I just want to know, and to get you moving, your fingers on the keyboard here. Could you just let me know if your young people are coming to school in physical education kit? Are they coming on days they're doing PE, or are they coming every day? And if they're not, can you just put they're still in school uniform? Because we're trying to, AFBI are trying to work out sort of the picture across the country. So fire away and put it in the chat box, that's great. Now, the reason why I've honed in on this one is because some subject leaders have said, oh no, we've reverted back to school uniform, or we're going to go back to school uniform once COVID has been and gone. And in your school policy, you might want to write about, like, to try and keep it going, because we all know the benefits now of it if we have been lucky enough to have enjoyed it. But in your school policy, perhaps write a section on the benefits and why it's good to come to school in PE kit, saving of teaching time, etc. Because it does go to your governing body, and I think sometimes the governors, a bit unclear. They do like a school uniform and etc. But once they understand why we are doing what we're doing, it can really help, and maybe we might get some longevity there. I don't know. So how are we doing? Let's have a look in the chat box. Good. Yeah. Okay. Good. I mean, the only thing about it, of course, is that it gets wet, and that's where we've had several complaints coming in from parents. Their children are getting wet and going home wet, but schools are getting around that. You know what to do, don't you? Get the spare kit in school on their pegs, etc. Everyone's got different ways of doing things. There are 26,000 schools in the country, and there are 26,000 ways of skinning a cat, I can tell you. But we find a way that works for our school, and we do our very best. Right, another one down the list there I'm going to pick out is about equipment. And in the equipment, you'll find a section on mats if you still need to put that into your school policy, so every member of staff is crystal clear about where we place those, because that's often a common question. We've got first aid there. Let's just whiz on a bit, and I'll show you some of the slides here. I've got stuck there. Okay, now you can't read that. Please don't go, why has she put that up there? I just want to explain to you that the best section in this whole book is the section on SEND, special educational needs. As a subject leader, you may be asked, I've got a child in a wheelchair, how can I include them in PE? You've got about 8 pages all on special educational needs in PE. This page starts the alphabet, asthma, just if you can draw your eyes to it, then the middle bit, what do staff need to know? We often all know, don't we? So that right hand side is what we want on advice. So if you can imagine, for every single need, AFBI and it relates to physical education, It's all in section 2 under special educational needs. So that is, I think, worth me drawing to your attention there. Okay, next slide. First aid, then this reminds me, this particular slide, if you have the book, is it just sitting in your classroom or under a paper somewhere? If you have it, please can you get it out to all your staff? Let them know. Perhaps have 10 minutes at the end of a staff meeting, just showing them, telling them roughly what's in it. But can you, with your school nurse or whoever's in charge of first aid, you can show them what's in the book, because I think they'd find it useful. So your SEND coordinator, show them those pages. I put this slide up, Daily Mile. So many schools across the country do this active, this active 30 minutes. We had a number of accidents over the last couple of years with the wrong footwear. Young people running in sort of slidey black patent shoes and sandals and toeless sandals. So can you, if they are doing the Daily Mile or the equivalent of, wear appropriate footwear? So that's now in the book. It wasn't in a 2016 copy. So basically in that chapter 2, I'm not going to go through all of that list. I mentioned about qualifications. I've mentioned that third one, SEN, safeguarding, I know you do to the hilt, but there is obviously we have to include a section in there. Parental consent, there's an example pro forma there. Parents, when you're taking young people off site, etc. Digital photography, sports days, what do we do in terms of, but lots of these I know it's no point in me talking about, because you'll go, Jan, we are right on it. If you're not on it, then have a look at the booklet. Okay, footwear, I didn't cover, did I? I didn't cover off. So we mentioned about mixed footwear in that warm-up slide at the beginning. Avoid training shoes when you are doing gymnastics, or even wearing shoes for any physical education. Observing a lesson the other day, and we had some shoes, really, don't go there. Keep the right footwear, training shoes or plimsolls, physical education, but not training shoes inside. Okay, so now I'm going on to chapter 3, and I've got a few minutes left here before we go on to questions. Chapter 3 is brand new, has never been written and never been in any other copy. And if you've got an old copy, by the way, put it straight in the bin, because it really is out of date now. But chapter 3 is all about the learning. What can young people learn about safety in PE? So great teaching we can, as well as teaching the skills and the knowledge, we can do knowledge about health and safety. And we've got 12 sections here. So I'm just going to show you a few and show you how they're structured. So something I'm very passionate about is back care and young people understanding about looking after their back. And the best place is in gymnastics for them to learn how to lift. So thumbs on top there when they're lifting something, hands cups underneath, any equipment that they're going to lift, benches, nesting tables, and they work together so that they are lifting well. But for every section in this chapter 3, there are learning objectives, which you might want to weave into your schemes of work. If you're updating a unit of work, you might just want to have a look at this section here and think, yep, I'll use some of these. And then you've got some learning tasks just to bring it alive. If you remember this, if I just quickly whiz to here, that section 1 in chapter 3 is about safe exercise practice. What does that look like? Let's just have a look here then. If we look at the first objective there, students are learning to take responsibility for maintaining control of their body. These are the learning objectives are progressive. So the first ones here relate very much to reception, the early years, where we have to get them to learn to stop, to control their body, before they then do anything else, as our early years practitioners know. But if you are a new teacher, you might want to look at the learning tasks here, and also some key questions as well that we'll be asking young people just to reinforce the learning. So you can see how it's all structured. Learning objective 3, still in this first section on safe exercise practice, the benefits of minimizing the risks of high impact. So learning to cushion the activity by that C shape, arms out in front, bending the knees when we land, etc. Section 6 of chapter 3, the learning about the role of physical activity in achieving energy balance, what goes in terms of food, how we use energy. I was charged by a school to write all of this chapter 3, weave it in all their schemes of work. Fine about back care, I went straight to gymnastics. This section here, I went to the athletics units, and I got the objectives woven in there about, our body's using energy all the time. So that learning came through there. And the last section, the section 12 of chapter 3, is about water safety. So you could give this section to the class teacher who's taking the children swimming. So you can reinforce about the flags, about the huddle position, everything to do with water safety. You might find it helpful section to know about. And also in that pupil premium template, PE and sport premium template, there's a section, isn't there, on water safety and safe self-rescue. So any learning we can get going in the classroom, let's do it. Okay. Whew, chapter 4. There are 4 chapters in this book. This is the last one now, and it's completely new as well. So what's in chapter 4? I think you might find this helpful if you were leading a staff meeting, for example, in your school. Let's just have a look what it encompasses. It looks at case law. I'll show you an example what that means. And the frequently asked questions that I've been asked, or my colleagues have been asked over the last 4 years, the frequently asked ones, we've put into the back of the book. Let me show you just a couple. Okay, got 2 minutes left. Just quickly read this one. So this case went through the courts. This was the outcome. I'll just talk about it. It was a really key case, this one. Okay. So what happened here in this particular case is the parents refused to take the earrings out. The school worked really hard. The school had a policy, that's in that first line. Once you've got a policy, they are the rules, if you like, the rules of engagement, the rules of the game. I would even suggest on this situation as well, so we don't waste a stupid amount of time on jewellery, is having it as part of your admissions booklet. So parents know exactly what they're buying into when they send their children to school, that there'll be no jewellery worn in physical education. Then they can't come back further down the line. But if you've got a policy, again, that helps in saying, look, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, we can't have earrings. Anyway, the point is that the judge in this case said his outcome was that health and safety trumped religion. So this business about, they can't take it out for religious reasons. It was really good to read that the judge has said, no, health and safety trumps religion. So that's really useful for us to know. So that was an example of case law. I'm showing you now, just before we finish, an example of a frequently asked question. We had a lot of questions coming through on transgender, and members of the association wanted help on, how we include everybody. And so you'll see how we respond when we have a question asked. We will respond like this. Don't worry about reading it all now because I'm not worried about the time. I just wanted to say that if you are a member, you can ask any questions, and generally call you back actually and just talk about it on the phone. And quite a lot of schools now are members and can have their health and safety questions answered straight away. But there are approximately 17 frequently asked questions in the back of the book. So you could, as a staff meeting, you could give this out to everybody. And then as the subject leader leading the meeting, you would keep this as the answer. So have a look at the other 17, probably find those really quite helpful. Okay, look, here are my outcomes. I wanted to get you to know, so I'm going to round it off now, you'll be pleased to know. Get to know the booklet, which I hope you, 4 chapters, health and safety, nuts and bolts, chapter 1, all about teaching, chapter 2, learning, chapter 3, about safe practice, chapter 4, case law, frequently asked questions. Hope I've stressed the importance of documentation. Who can teach PE, the qualifications we've mentioned about. Now over to you. If you've had enough and you think, I'm just going to go and get my tea, go and mark some more books, get ready for tomorrow, do go. But can I first of all thank you for being here tonight. Really hope you found it helpful. Any feedback would be in the chat box. Very grateful. But just remember this bit here before you go. Look, teaching, if you're teaching safely as well within your lessons, you're going to have effective teaching and management, great teaching and great learning. It's the basic principle behind this seminar tonight and the document produced by the Association for Physical Education. Thank you. Okay, let's open it up. Unmute if you've got any questions. I'm not going anywhere. So fire away. And if you just want to sit and listen to the questions, people sometimes find this the best bit. So Jess, shall I stop sharing, Jess?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jan. I hope you've all found that really informative. I've certainly learned some new things from you, Jan. If anybody wants to unmute and ask a question, please do. Otherwise, we'll thank Jan very much for her time. If you think of any questions or you want any more information, you would have all received emails from me with the Zoom details on for today. So please do drop me an email or give me a ring and I can forward things on to Jan or answer them within Active Lincolnshire. Oh, there we do have a question. If you have written permission for earrings to be in and taped, do you still have to insist they're taken out?
No, don't use any waivers, any disclaimers, anything parents are writing. They just don't hold up in a court of law. The duty of care is for the school. What is in your policy? So never give something for parents to sign. It's just not worth the paper it's written on. So it depends what you've got. So Nathan, isn't it? If you're in your policy, if you have, the earrings can be taped, if all your staff are happy with that. The reason why AFBI have withdrawn it from the book is because it's the back of the earring, and we found that sometimes the taping wasn't adequate for that the back of the earring to be safe. So it might be something you want to discuss as a staff, this one. It can be quite a thorny one, but whatever in your policy is what goes. I think I've answered that one, haven't I, Jess?
Yes, I wanted to add to that, Jan. So on the subject of jewellery, if the school decided not to have a policy on jewellery for whatever reason, and there was an injury caused by an earring, for example, I presume then there would be some comeback to the school, from a parent, for example. Does that happen where a school says, I don't want to go there with a policy? What would happen is that the book now is really deemed as the Bible in terms of health and safety. So this book would be the one that judges would use in a court of law. So they would go, okay, what does the National Association say about this? That would be their reference point. So I think it would be foolish for schools not to have anything. And I don't know, I've never known a school not to have anything written. Sometimes it would be
We have all jewelry taken out other than earrings, and we tape those. That happens, or we just don't have any earrings at all, or any jewelry at all. But I've never known a school not to have anything. See, sometimes schools might not have a PE policy. It might be in the health and safety policy of the school. So sometimes, all of this legal stuff is within the whole school health and safety policy. But I advocate having a separate PE one, because I think it's quite helpful for us as practitioners.
Yeah. One other question, Jan, just in the chat box. So, that's a couple actually. It's an autistic child with sensory issues over water near the face and ears. How can they be accommodated for swimming? That's a really interesting question.
Can I just answer Nathan just quickly, in case Nathan wants to jump on? Nathan, if it's written in your policy that they can wear earrings, then that's absolutely fine, then, because that's what you've got. Parents know, don't they? So that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I can't really go with taping. That's my problem. I mean, if your staff want to, they're happy with it. Have you asked them recently? I just know, just from experience, that the taping is just doesn't work sometimes. That's all. So there's a risk there, isn't there? So I'll just leave that with you to discuss with your staff. But on this webinar tonight, the speaker said she doesn't rate taping. Okay, I'm happy to have a one-to-one with you if you want. So let's go back to the autistic child now, who sensory issues over water near face and ears, and how can they be accommodated? Well, it is a tricky one, but it comes down to the instructor and how much experience they have in this area, because some of those beautiful, and the pool that the child's in as well, because some of the best practice I've seen for these children have been where the pool is very small and the acoustics are terrifying. It's not a council pool with loads of people in it. It's a school pool. So I think I would first of all look as to where you take that child swimming, the environment. That's the key, I think, for them gaining confidence. And then I'd look at the quality of the instruction and how much they know about autism. And I think I'd start from there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jess.